Hello, everyone. My name is Sophia. I was born and raised in Maryland, a tranquil town adorned with tree-lined streets and neat rows of houses. My childhood unfolded in this serene place alongside my loving parents. My mother was a gentle soul, her warm smile greeting me every morning as she prepared breakfast in our modest kitchen. From dawn until dusk, her presence brought light to our small home. My father, though a man of few words, was the cornerstone of our family. He worked tirelessly to provide for us, ensuring we lacked nothing important. Our house, while simple and unassuming, was a haven of love and happiness. In my memories, everything seemed idyllic, until it wasn't. When I was just 15, my world shattered. My mother fell ill unexpectedly, and before I could grasp the gravity of her condition, she was gone. Her absence created a void so profound it left our once vibrant home eerily quiet. I watched my father sink into loneliness, the laughter and warmth that had filled our days replaced by a heavy silence. Life carried on, but it wasn't the same. Mornings still meant school, and evenings still brought me back to that familiar kitchen, but the air felt different. The meals remained simple, yet the table felt emptier, even with both chairs occupied. Though we lived under the same roof, my father and I seemed worlds apart. At 18, another wave of change swept over my life. My father remarried. While I understood his right to find happiness again, the news still stunned me. His new wife, my stepmother, was a kind and gentle woman who came into our lives with her son, Ethan, who was a year younger than me. Initially, everything felt strange, as if my carefully reconstructed world had been flipped upside down again. I struggled to adjust, especially to having a new younger brother. Ethan, for his part, never gave me any reason to feel uneasy. Quiet and reserved, he seemed just as unsure about this new chapter as I was. Evenings became a blend of familiar and unfamiliar. While my father and stepmother discussed their days and plans for the future, Ethan and I often exchanged brief glances that carried an unspoken awkwardness, before quickly looking away. Over time, family meals became a way for us to connect, though it wasn't without its oddities. Each dinner was like a cautious dance, as we all navigated this strange new dynamic together. Ethan's small acts of kindness often caught me off guard, like the time he turned off the stove and brought me a plate of food without a word. It was such a simple gesture, yet it left me feeling strangely unsettled. He wasn't the talkative type, always maintaining a quiet demeanor, but I couldn't ignore the way his gaze would sometimes linger on me longer than expected. I brushed it off as my imagination, convincing myself that it was nothing more than a younger brother's attachment to his new older sister. Yet, as days turned into weeks, an unspoken tension began to weave its way into our interactions, subtle but undeniable. What should have been sibling affection had somehow grown into something more complex, something harder to name. There were moments when Ethan's proximity made my heart race, an unwelcome rush of feelings that I tried to suppress. I hated the confusion it brought, the way my thoughts betrayed the boundaries of what our relationship should be. Despite my efforts to dismiss it, I found myself noticing Ethan in ways I shouldn't, like the sharp lines of his jaw, or how his quiet demeanor masked a quiet strength. One late night, I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. Ethan slipped into my room, as he sometimes did, for our usual late-night chat. But this time, something felt different. Instead of leaving after a brief exchange, he stayed, his eyes locked onto mine with a quiet intensity that made my breath hitch. The silence between us grew heavy, a mix of uncertainty and unspoken words filling the room. I didn't know what to say, but when he didn't move to leave, I gave a small nod, silently telling him he could stay. For what felt like hours, we sat there, shrouded in darkness, lit only by the faint glow of moonlight seeping through the curtains. We were like two strangers caught in an inexplicable closeness, a connection neither of us could fully articulate. I couldn't deny that Ethan was strikingly handsome, something I had become painfully aware of over time. And though I wrestled with guilt for noticing such things about him, I tried to rationalize it as the inevitable result of two young people sharing the same living space. Our bedrooms were side by side on the second floor, while my father and stepmother slept downstairs. This arrangement sometimes led to awkward encounters, especially during quiet nights. Ethan was in his final year of high school, buried in the stress of upcoming exams, while I was adjusting to the demands of my first year of college. We were both navigating the chaos of our own lives, yet the tension between us simmered just beneath the surface. There were evenings when we found ourselves sitting together in the living room, the soft glow of the television casting fleeting shadows across our faces. Neither of us spoke, the silence stretching out, heavy with things neither of us dared to say aloud. I found myself lost in thought, unsure of what to say or how to make sense of the feelings swirling between Ethan and me. What we shared wasn't the typical bond between siblings. Somewhere along the way, I realized that my feelings for him had grown into something far deeper than familial affection. The revelation confused me, yet I couldn't deny how my heart raced every time I looked at him. Those fleeting moments, like when we crossed paths on the staircase and our eyes met, carried an intensity I couldn't ignore. There was something in his gaze, a quiet emotion that lingered, leaving me both unsettled and captivated. One evening, as calm as any other, I had a strange sense that it wouldn't end as uneventfully as it began. My father and stepmother had gone on a 5-day trip, leaving Ethan and me alone in the house. Initially, we saw it as an opportunity to relax, free from the watchful eyes of adults. That night, we ended up in the living room, deciding to put on a romantic movie, not because we cared much about it, but simply to pass the time. I had prepared some snacks, dried squid, fresh fruit, and a few cans of beer, hoping to unwind after a hectic week. The movie began uneventfully, lighthearted and easy to watch. We sat comfortably, making small talk and sharing occasional laughs, the kind of easy moments that felt routine by now. But then, out of nowhere, the movie took a sudden turn, a passionate scene unfolded on screen, catching both of us off guard. The laughter stopped. The casual atmosphere between us shifted, becoming something heavier and harder to define. The space that had once felt safe and familiar grew tense, almost suffocating. I could feel Ethan's gaze on me, not the usual fleeting glance, but something more intense, more deliberate. A warmth crept through me, spreading faster than I could suppress it. I gripped the cold beer can in my hand, using it as an anchor to stay calm. But before I could process what was happening, Ethan moved closer. Without a word, he pulled me into his arms, his embrace firm and undeniable. His lips found mine with a desperate urgency, as if all the feelings we had buried for so long were finally unleashed. I was overwhelmed, my thoughts racing in chaos while my body betrayed me, responding instinctively to his touch. In that moment, we crossed an invisible line. What should have been a quiet evening between siblings became something entirely different. The room, dimly lit and silent except for the faint hum of the TV, bore witness to a shift that couldn't be undone. That night changed everything. I knew, as it unfolded, that nothing would ever be the same again. That night, Ethan and I crossed every boundary imaginable, giving in to desires we had kept buried for far too long. We didn't exchange many words, everything seemed to happen on instinct, as though all the tension between us had finally erupted into something neither of us could contain. The next morning remains etched in my memory. As soft sunlight streamed through the curtains, I found myself lying next to Ethan in the room I had always considered my personal sanctuary. Everything around me looked unchanged, the same serene silence, the same warm light, but inside, I was entirely different. We didn't speak much, just exchanged a silent look that conveyed more than words ever could. In that fleeting moment, we both seemed to understand that what had happened between us had altered everything. There was no going back to how things used to be. With my father and stepmother still away on their trip, Ethan and I slipped into an unspoken rhythm that felt both liberating and dangerous. The awkwardness we once shared had evaporated, replaced by something deeper, more intense. We stopped pretending to be mere siblings, instead, we lived as if we were two people in love, free from the judgmental gaze of the outside world. Meals transformed from routine family gatherings into intimate moments shared only between the two of us. Each night, we found ourselves together in my room, where we could escape from the constraints of reality. For those fleeting days, I allowed myself to forget who we were, siblings in name only, and instead embrace the illusion that we were simply a young couple, unburdened by the complications of the world. Everything felt so natural, so effortless, that I couldn't resist. It was as though I was caught in a current, unable and unwilling to swim back to shore. Nights blurred into mornings, and with each passing day, I let myself be swept further into the secrecy of our forbidden bond. But reality has a way of intruding, no matter how deeply we try to bury it. The day my parents returned from their trip arrived like a thunderclap, shattering the fragile world Ethan and I had built. As they stepped through the door, the familiar rhythms of family life resumed, forcing Ethan and me to revert to our carefully constructed roles. We played our parts well, two siblings living under the same roof, nothing more. Every intimate moment, every whispered word, was locked away like a shared secret we could never reveal. My parents remained blissfully unaware, chatting cheerfully about their travels while Ethan and I sat in silence, exchanging subtle glances that carried the weight of everything we had shared. In the months that followed, the reality of what we had done began to sink in. We had returned to our outwardly normal lives, but the connection we had forged during those nights lingered, a silent presence in the space between us. By day, we returned to our roles as siblings. Family meals unfolded without incident, our parents blissfully unaware of the unspoken tension that simmered beneath the surface. Ethan and I exchanged fleeting glances, careful not to linger too long or give anything away. The air between us was charged, leaving me breathless, yet I was powerless to stop. The guilt gnawed at me, but it was never enough to outweigh the pull I felt toward him. Every stolen night with Ethan became so deeply ingrained in my life that I feared losing it. The bond we had forged, though hidden, felt unbreakable. But I was no fool, I knew the risks we were taking, the irreversible consequences that could arise. Quietly, I began taking birth control pills, making sure no one would ever discover this secret precaution. It was my way of controlling what felt uncontrollable, of convincing myself that everything was still manageable. For a time, I allowed myself to believe in this precarious balance. But life, as always, had other plans. A year later, Ethan graduated from high school and moved away to attend college in another city. His departure hit me harder than I expected. The house felt emptier, the nights lonelier. No more whispered conversations under the cover of darkness, no more stolen moments. The distance between us was a harsh reminder that our relationship, already so fragile, could not withstand the strain. Although I tried to carry on, a deep nostalgia lingered, pulling me back to the memories of what we had shared. But I knew I couldn't stay stuck in the past forever. After completing my own education, I decided it was time to carve out a new path for myself. I secured a job as an office worker at a digital company, a role that was neither exciting nor remarkable but provided the stability I desperately needed. And then, everything changed. I met him, a man unlike any other, someone who turned my world upside down in the best possible way. He was the owner of a prominent hair salon in the city, a charismatic yet gentle soul who exuded confidence without arrogance. From the moment we first met, I was captivated by his presence. There was something magnetic about him, the way he spoke, the way he looked at me. Every conversation felt like a window into a safer, brighter world, one I hadn't realized I was missing. For the first time in years, I felt truly at ease, unburdened by the weight of secrecy and guilt. Our connection deepened quickly, as though we were fated to find one another. Love blossomed naturally between us, free of the complications that had defined my past. It was a fresh start, a chance to leave behind the emotional chaos and embrace a life I never thought possible. Not long after, I embarked on a new chapter in my life, a chapter I had once only dreamed of. I married a kind and loving man who showed me the warmth and stability I had always craved. Together, we started building a family, a sanctuary of love and care. The arrival of our child filled my days with a sense of completeness I had never known. Life felt full, vibrant, and almost perfect. Yet, the shadows of the past have a way of creeping in when you least expect them. Though my days are now centered on my husband and our child, there are fleeting moments when the memories of Ethan resurface. They haunt me in the quiet, unguarded hours when my mind drifts back to those forbidden days. I've done my best to push those thoughts away, to bury them beneath the weight of my new reality, but they remain, a faint echo of a time I can't fully forget. I found a home in my husband, a man who deserves nothing less than my complete honesty and devotion. His unwavering love and support have been my anchor, yet I can't help but feel a deep, unrelenting guilt. Every time I meet his eyes, there's a heaviness in my chest, a part of me that whispers I'm not worthy of his affection. After all, I'm hiding a part of myself, a part that, if revealed, could shatter the trust we've built. The question of whether to tell him about my past with Ethan gnaws at my conscience. There are nights when I lie awake, torn between two equally daunting choices. Should I come clean, risking everything we've worked so hard to build? Or should I carry this secret to my grave, shielding him and our child from the pain such a confession would surely cause? The thought of confessing fills me with dread. What if he looks at me differently? What if the love he has for me turns into resentment? The life we've created, the home, the laughter, the precious moments with our child, could all unravel in an instant. But at the same time, keeping this secret feels like a slow poison, a burden that grows heavier with each passing day. I sometimes wonder if I even deserve the happiness I've found with him. Now, I find myself standing at a crossroads, paralyzed by the weight of this decision. Do I reveal the truth and face the consequences, no matter how devastating they might be? Or do I stay silent, hoping the past will remain buried and never resurface to harm the people I hold dear? I'm sharing my story with you, hoping for guidance, understanding, or even criticism. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you choose to confess, risking everything, or keep the secret to protect the life you've built? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I don't know which path is the right one, and your advice might help me find the clarity I so desperately need.